regular board meeting to order. If you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. As we move into board member roll call, I did want to just recognize Mara Gans, our newly elected board member here. Welcome, Mara. It looks like we do have all 7 members here, with Scott Jensen joining us online. So we'll proceed. In December every year, the board elects its officers, so that's why I'm facilitating at this point in the meeting. And the first order of business along those lines is to elect the chairperson. So I would entertain a motion for chairperson of this board.
Yeah, I'll move that we elect Jared Kale as board chairman.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? All right, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of Jared Kale as chairperson, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Opposed? All right, motion passes. We'd also, at this point, entertain a motion for vice chairperson of the board.
Mr. Chair, I move to nominate Mike McConnell for vice chair.
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion on that motion? All right, vote. The motion on the table is Mike McConnell for vice chairperson. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that motion passes as well. Third on the list here, clerk of the Fremont One board. I'll entertain a motion for clerk.
Mr. Chair, I nominate Scott Jensen for clerk.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on that motion? Scott Jensen for clerk. All right, we'll go ahead and take the vote then. All those in favor of Scott Jensen for Fremont One clerk, please say aye.
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 All right, any opposed? All right, motion passes. Our final officer is treasurer, so I'd entertain a motion for treasurer of the Fremont One Board of Trustees.
I nominate Taylor Jacobs to continue to serve as treasurer.
We have a second. Sorry.
Second.
Okay, discussion on that motion. Taylor Jacobs for treasurer. All right, we'll go ahead and proceed to the vote. All those in favor of Taylor Jacobs for treasurer of the Fremont One Board, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes as well. With that, I will hand the reins to our re-elected chairperson, Jared Kale.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I think the only thing that I need to mention about the election officers is, as the vice chairperson, you actually have to use a computer. I just wanted to bring that up. I've got one. It printed all this stuff. All right. Okay. We'll move into general business. I need to see if there's any additional agenda items for this evening that maybe Mike and I forgot.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Taylor.
Mr. Chair.
Taylor, sorry, Mara.
I'm curious if we could have a discussion about the possibility of posting Zoom recordings of meetings online, out of respect for transparency of board meetings.
Yeah, we can add that as part D under discussion. Any others? All right, hearing none, we can move to the adoption of the agenda. Just so everyone is aware, when we adopt the agenda, we're also adopting everything that is under the consent agenda as approved. Just FYI, so for example, tonight, approve expenditures and pre-approve utility payments and financial reports, reporting of homeschooled students and curriculum, approval of surplus disposable property, designate the superintendent or his designee as the authorized person to sign state, federal, and special education contracts and grants, Designate the curriculum director as the district's representative for Title 6, 7, and 9 of the U.S. Ed Code. Appoint law firm of Copenhagen, Cath, Kitchen, and Kolpitki to represent the district, and appoint the Lander Journal as the official newspaper record. I normally won't read those, but I just wanted to make it clear that that's what we do when we adopt the agenda. So can I get a motion for that, please?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I need to get an approval for minutes of November 19th.
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I wasn't here.
Okay.
Doesn't feel appropriate.
So in that case, probably an
Yeah,
abstention?
I'll stay.
Okay. All right. I think recognitions, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of items by way of recognition. Last night, my wife and I had the pleasure of attending the LMS LVHS choir concert at the LVHS auditorium. It was amazing. Both choirs sounded incredible, including the choirs in each of the schools, the different grade levels, and the Sings choir and the Rise and all the other groups that are part of that program. It was incredible, especially when all the choirs sang together at the very end, which means that's the first time they did that because you can't rehearse all those choirs at the same time. So that was their first rehearsal and the final performance, which is especially impressive if you ask me. Afterward, in the Commons, Chris Sandel, who's one of the accompanists, and Brooks Whitmore, who teaches music at Gannett Peak, played the piano in the Commons. And everyone who was there, if they wanted to, join in for Christmas carols when they weren't shoving cookies into their faces like I mostly did. So it was just really cool to see that spirit and to see that community embrace that performance. It was really cool. So I just wanted to recognize Susan Volbrecht, our choral music educator, Chris Sandel, an accompanist, and Jean Oakley, who just started last month as an accompanist, for all their work with these students. And congrats to all the students and their parents and teachers for that concert. It was amazing. Turning to activities, I did want to recognize several students who earned all-state honors this year in our fall activities. In girls swimming, we have Katie Anderson, she's a 3-time all-state winner. Chase Denton, Veda Havens, Emma Jones, who was 2-time. Sarah Kearns, Emily Plaisted, Dagan Reinhardt, who's a 2-time all-state, and Lara Robertson, who's a 4-time all-state, which is amazing. So congratulations to those who are in football. Caleb Hamilton was named all-state on the defensive line. He's a junior this year. He's played 3 years on varsity, which is really tough to do, especially in that sport. So congratulations to Caleb. And then for choir and band, several students in choir attained all-state and 1 in band. So Seth Hoyt is an all-state for bass. Dagan Reinhardt is also all-state for soprano. Lucia Sabino for alto, Dominic Weigel for tenor, and Mac White for tenor. And for flute, Katie Wilson was named all-state. So congrats to those musicians and to their parents, teachers, and coaches on a job well done this fall. And we'll have more to share about winter and spring when those times come. So that's it, Mr. Chair.
Maybe we should suspend the pledge one of these times and have Dagan sing the national anthem instead. No?
You can do
Okay, public comment. Do we have any public comment this evening? Any public comment? Yes, ma'am.
I just have a comment later on the cell phone.
On cell phone, okay.
Should I say it then?
Yeah, we'll do it at that point. I just want to put a little note down here so I don't forget. Any others? Okay, thank you. Move right along. Programs, reports, and presentation. Board member report. Anyone tonight? Mark.
I attended and volunteered at the LVHS ski swap, which I'll write down the date next time. It was a few weeks ago, and there was a huge turnout of people both getting skis and other outdoor equipment to be able to participate at an affordable price in outdoor recreation. And then our ski team made a ton of money to support their season. And the ski team has a new head coach and a new assistant coach, and I spoke with both of them, and it sounds like they're taking advantage of all the early snow at Beaver Creek and having a great start to the season.
Great, thanks. Eileen.
Yeah, I have a quick kind of recognition to throw out there. Christy Nelson and Kenny, is it Kostreva or Kostreva? Kostreva. Both educators here at LVHS just presented this last weekend at the Literacy Research Association's 74th annual conference in Georgia, which to me, the number 74 means this is a big deal. So it's such an honor to have our educators out there sharing their knowledge and all of the wonderful things that they do with students in our district. So I just wanted to thank them for their work that got them to that level. What a great thing. And then I had the opportunity to attend the legislative luncheon with Jared and Taylor this last week, where 5 of our Fremont County representatives were on hand to give us a little I don't know, maybe a little glimpse into the future of the Wyoming legislative session that'll start here in 2025, and then also to answer questions from the audience. So that was pretty interesting. It's a really new group of legislators. I think the most surprising thing that Lloyd Larson said is that out of the 64 House members, 8 of them had a minimum of 8 years of experience. So that leaves 56, if I do my math right. And out of those 56, more than half are brand new legislators, and the other half have served 1 term. So it's going to be a steep learning curve. So anyway, it was interesting.
One of the things I found interesting during that session, unfortunately had to leave because I had to get back to work, but was the questions from the kids were all focused around mental health, which last year was not that way, but this year certainly was. The focus was there. But that was interesting.
Mr. Chair,
Taylor.
I'll just add on to that. The other thing that I thought was interesting with that was that the legislators were talking about the mental health supports in the schools and what they're looking at and how that would look. But for me personally, I think it's somewhat interesting in the budget situation that we're in, where we would look at and they would consider allocating support for just mental health instead of maybe looking at adding that into general budget and general funds, and then letting that local control, which they talked so much about, and then letting specific districts allocate that, because I think in some communities that might not be as much of a concern as others. I think we're probably on that boat where it is a concern, but just something to note. And so just talking as community members to your legislators, if you're worried about budgeting, it seems like that's where we're at, is money and shortages there. And then I'll just add, after our last board meeting, I attended the State Board of Education meeting, and that was in Casper. There was some really great presenters that came. Wyoming Wonders is a curriculum that is donor funded, and they came and presented, and they do 12 units of study in like 3 major industries in Wyoming. So like tourism, oil, land exploration. And a lot of their curriculum it's free online to teachers, and we actually have teachers at Gannett Peak, and then the 5th graders at Baldwin Creek use it as well. And I don't know if we've adopted it like as a curriculum. He kind of talks about keeping it as like a teacher controlled curriculum, which I think is great, but the program itself hits on a lot of science and social studies standards, but also has some ELA in there as well. And there's 22 out of 23 counties in the state that use it. But if people are interested in it, they have some summer education workshops. The kids, they can go to fish hatcheries, mines, that kind of stuff. And then they have free workshops and PD opportunities for teachers. So if you go to wyomingwonders.org, you can find that information from there. And then I attended the Wyoming School Board Association conference with Scott and Travis, and some good information was presented there. Megan Park and Morgan Hahn were recognized for their WDE awards. Megan wasn't unable to attend, but Morgan did attend, and she did a really great job when she accepted her award, talking about public education and being a teacher and a student from Wyoming. And so it was very inspiring. And so kudos to her. And then the Lander Middle School hosted the Lander Lander Invite tournament at LVHS. And not only did the team take first place, but it was one of the first wrestling tournaments where we were out by like 2 or 3 p.m. So it was wonderful.
Congratulations.
It was very well run. There was lots of wonderful parent volunteers and support from the community. So thank you to everyone on that. And then last, the middle school had their wrestling conference in Vermont this last Saturday. And both the boys and girls team placed third, and then the girls placed second. There was a few first place individuals and then some others, but that team, the middle school, Coach Swift and Coach Atnip have done a wonderful job. There was like 70 wrestlers, both male and female. And so I just went to the awards banquet before coming here. And so, 70 kids together in a room, middle schoolers, it was loud even at the awards banquet. So kudos to that group. And lastly, Baldwin Creek is hosting a food drive for canned goods and food for our community. And sounds like the 5th graders are losing to the 4th graders and they are not happy about that. Thanks.
Any others?
Yeah, I can chime in just a little bit. At the WSBA conference, one of the questions that I had when I went there that I was hoping to get an answer to, as we're talking about mental health, one of the problems we have with mental health is drug abuse by students and others in our community. So we've implemented a drug testing policy for students involved in activities. But as we were doing that, and as discussions have been had, people have asked me, why aren't we, or have we considered drug testing teachers or staff? And so I brought that up with Scott Kolpetke to see what he thought about that, and learned that we cannot do that. So because we're a government employer, the Supreme Court has ruled in the past that compulsory drug testing for employees of the government is unconstitutional. It'd be an illegal search without probable cause. And so without doing so without cause is not something that we could do, other than some narrow exceptions like bus drivers or other safety related positions. So at any rate, so if people had questions about why we're not doing that, we cannot do that.
Thanks for asking that, Scott. That's important. That's come up several times.
Yeah.
The one last thing I just wanted to mention that did come out of that legislative luncheon that I thought was kind of interesting, something for us all to keep in mind. This was Senator Case talked a little bit about this, I think, and that's funding going forward in the future. We've got 3 things that are sort of colliding that may make some things difficult. One is the school choice program, and we all know where that's at, and that's fine. I don't have a lot of heartburn over that. I think we're an awesome district and we can stand our own, but that may siphon some ADMs away. Of course, we've always got the mineral income or the mineral revenues, which right now have been holding strong, but over time, I think could be in jeopardy. So that's an issue there. And then we have the new property taxes. I never really thought about this when it was on the ballot, but those property taxes primarily fund the schools, right? So we've broken those down into another category. And if the legislature chooses to reduce the amount of property tax that homeowners pay, that very well could mean that the school loses some income there. So none of those things look particularly positive in terms of our ability to fund education in Fremont County, at least school district number 1. So just want to bring that up, not to be Debbie Downer, but that was something that was brought up that I thought was important. So we have the superstar swimmer and singer down here. Would you, do you have a report for us tonight, Dagan?
Mr. Chair, last Friday was our winter ball, and Suka put on another great dance. It's been like the most successful semester in my time on student council for sure, so that's pretty awesome. And then this weekend is the girls and boys and ski team and wrestling and everything's first tournament and meets and whatever. And the first basketball tournament will be in Lander Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then I can't remember the date, but the Pioneer Museum is putting on their Christmas town thing.
Cool.
And the NHS will be helping with that. And I know the band will be playing in their library stable for a little bit. And then me personally, I've never been more excited for Christmas break. And very Very, very excited for that.
Awesome. I'm sure that the principals understand where you're coming from there. Thanks, Dagan. Mr. Harris, Superintendent's report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. At last month's, at last month's board meeting, Trustee Harms had asked some questions about suspension and expulsion, specifically in relation to stipulated agreements. So I wanted to get back to the full board on those questions and hopefully present some information about that topic, and then entertain some questions, I suppose, if there are any, based on what I'm sharing. So it's a little tricky. I'm going to be focusing on stipulated agreements, which are basically voluntary agreements between the student, parent, or guardian and the school that allow the student to avoid a full expulsion if certain conditions are met, otherwise known as stipulations. So that's why it's called a stipulated agreement. And the reason this discussion is a little tricky is because without aggregating the data, it can be easy to tell which student or which school we're talking about. So what I did was go back to the beginning of the 22-23 school year and aggregate the results. In your board packet on board docs, I attached kind of an expanded year-by-year breakdown if you're curious about seeing some of those details. But for the public consumption tonight, I just wanted to cover this kind of aggregate data from those 3 years. So since the start of the 22-23 school year, we've had 55 stipulated agreements in our district. The vast majority are high school students, about 86% of those. A handful are from LMS, 11%, and only one from the elementary, from either elementary school. The most common reason for expulsion has to do with drugs and alcohol, far and away. That is 95% of our stipulated agreements. That is the offense that led to the stipulated agreement. Most commonly, students receive 10 days of out-of-school suspension plus 20 days of the alternate placement program for an infraction involving drugs or alcohol. So that is what is stipulated in those agreements. Instead of being fully expelled from school, you get 10 days of out-of-school suspension. You come to the alternate placement program, which is operated here and run in Fremont 1, right on this property, actually near Pathfinder High School. And then once that's complete, you return to your school of origin and continue. We had in 22-23 some students, and in years prior, we had students at the so-called Day Reporting Center, or DRC, which is housed over in Riverton, Fremont School District 25. But we haven't had any students since that school year, so none last year and none this year. And the reasons for that are many, but one of the things with DRC is they've kind of tightened which students they will take. You have to be court involved, and even then we found even if the court is involved in your situation, they may tell you that you're not an option for their program. So we tend to do way more with our alternate placement program here, which also facilitates better connection for the student with their school, so that when they get back in the main school, they're more easily able to reintegrate into the curriculum and into their class schedule. I would like to just talk a little bit about outcomes, because that is a major thing we need to consider when we're talking about expulsions or stipulated agreements. Most of the students who take a stipulated agreement graduate or remain enrolled. And in the years I looked at, that was 80%. So it was by no means a quick exit from the school district. I was pleased to find and pleased to confirm 13% of those 55 stipulated agreements, 13% of the students eventually at some point dropped out, and only 7% transferred to another district. So those are the three main outcomes. You either stay in school and graduate, or much less likely you drop out or transfer. So that's kind of the picture for the 55 stipulated agreements. We've also had students in those years who were expelled without a stipulated agreement. 7 of those 8 students were offered a stipulated agreement, but declined for whatever reasons. The one student that was not offered a stipulated agreement was a special circumstance that we won't get into, but of those 8 students, 5 of them were high school students and 3 were from the middle school. Of those 8 that declined a stipulated agreement, 5 of the offenses had to do with drugs or alcohol. 2 of the offenses had to do with chronic insubordination or disruption, and 1 was that other case that I mentioned. The biggest difference between these students and those who take a stipulated agreement has to do with the outcomes. Of those 8 students, 5 had dropped out. We know that 1 achieved a passing score on the high school equivalency test, which is kind of like the modern version of the GED. 1 went to Job Corps in Riverton, and 3 were not really sure what happened. They may have enrolled in another school district, but we never got a records request. So to us, they've dropped out of school, as far as we know. 3 of the 8 transferred to another school district, And I would like to add, though, all of these students would be eligible to return to Fremont 1 by now, if they would like. But only one of these 8 students has re-enrolled. So that's a little picture of the difference when a student has a stipulated agreement versus not. It seems more likely that with the stipulated, they remain connected to the school district and their teachers and the curriculum and are able to reintegrate and hopefully achieve a more positive outcome than they would if they were simply expelled. So that's kind of the overall aggregate info for the stipulated agreements and those that are expelled without one for the last couple of school years. And I guess if there's any questions or further information you'd like me to gather, I can do that. I just wondered what you guys were thinking on that, if I could answer any questions.
I just have one quick thing just for those that aren't aware. When they do come back, even when they're on stipulated, then they're on a probationary period.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. So yes, part of the stipulations in the agreement are that you have to maintain certain performance markers, or else you could have your period in the alternate placement program extended. You got to pass your classes. You can't have other infractions. So we do have sometimes, like rarely, a student that will offend in the same area for a second time. In those instances, your period of time at the APP extends. And you're probably more likely to be involved with the court if it's a drug offense after you've had multiple citations. So that is absolutely true. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Taylor.
I just find it interesting because you mentioned the 55, but if you break it down each year, you know, our highest year was in 2022 and 2023 with 29 stipulated agreements, and 3 of those were alcohol related. And then last school year, right, that would have been 2023, 2024, there was 15. So a big drop last year from the year before stipulated agreements with only 1 alcohol incident. And then as year to date this year is 11 with 7 of those alcohol related. So it's interesting to see what the drug testing policy is. It seems like alcohol incidents are rising. So that's just nice.
I mean, alcohol relative to other drugs and substances?
Yes, sorry.
I just have a quick question. Aren't these, the students with the alcohol and drug offenses also charged legally?
Mr. Chair, Karen, I'm not sure, probably not in the alcohol cases. For the drugs, it kind of depends on what the officers and what the county attorney does. And our principals may be able to speak to the likelihood of charges being filed or not. But I found that it kind of depends.
Do we have any way, and you might have sort of answered this in answering Chair Jared Kill's question, but of knowing about repeat offenses, when students are in OSS, does that lead to a reduction, or do we have a way of knowing if it actually leads to a reduction in drug and alcohol use? That is what in the stipulated agreement for?
Mr. Chair and Mara, I don't know specifically. I didn't pull out about reoffenders. I know that there are several of them are represented in the data that are broken down in their executive content. But as far as like, are they still engaging in the use of drugs or alcohol? I don't know. A lot of the kids, well, all of the kids that are involved in these numbers are not in activities, so they're not drug tested. So we don't really know about that angle. And then if they're not participating in those activities and they don't disclose, we really wouldn't know if they're continuing to use or not.
I also have another question. Are students allowed to go to the activities outside of school, like the dances and games and everything if they're on in a stipulated order?
Mr. Chair, Karen, I think basically for the period of the stipulated agreement, you're not to be on any school property except for the APP, unless there's some other conditions that are unique to that particular situation. But that is part of the typical template for a stipulated agreement is
So that's for
to go to games and.
So that's for the whole year, the whole
No, that's just for the period of the
time that they're out of school.
Yes, yes. Right.
Yeah, you probably haven't heard this, but we use the term 10+20 when we talk about these, and that's the 10 days that they're out of school and the 20 at day report. So,
Okay.
any other questions for Mike? Karen?
Like, is it?
I could see your fingers.
Me too. I was like, I do have one more question. I would like to know more about like if this is their first offense, like if like third offense, second offense, when do they get the stipulated agreement?
Yeah.
I guess.
So Mr. Chair, Karen, almost all of these students, and I didn't again pull out the second offenders, but the vast majority I would say are first time offenders. This is the first time they've been in trouble for this offense. If we go back in prior years, there's a couple of students that have been, engaging in the same activity for two times in the same school year. One of those students dropped out at one point and came back, at least one of them. And so I didn't look at that specifically, but I do think when you have done the same thing twice and it's drugs or alcohol, your likelihood of dropping out of school goes way up. And I don't have the data to bear that out right now, but just anecdotally, as I was reviewing that sure seems like the case.
So just a quick question. So first offense, drug and alcohol, we're recommending a year expulsion. So even setting it aside that they get the stipulated agreement, our recommendation right off the bat is a year expulsion for the first offense for a drug and alcohol.
Mr. Chair, that is correct, yes. If not for the stipulated, if you decline it, then that's.
You're out for a year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that any drug or illegal drug or alcohol substance?
Mr. Chair, Mara, so yes, that's whatever's in the student handbook is being an illegal substance. For example, if you had a prescription medication that wasn't prescribed to you, that would fall under that umbrella too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. What else you got? What else you got cooking for us tonight?
That was all I had planned. I didn't know how long the discussion would take on that after the little brief intro, but yeah,
Okay.
that was all.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, I think at this point then, I need to get a motion to move into executive session for matters related to employment of personnel.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? We'll go to Mike's on. Yep. Scott, I'll give you a call.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Scott, just a reminder to mute yourself when we're done.
Will do.
Taylor, we have a conversation about you and Mara both wearing sweaters. It's nice sweaters. It's good. I know, they're beautiful, but nice. It's gonna totally screw me up one day.
Well, right, I should have.
Oh, no, did I time out?
Mr. Kale and fellow board members. This is from Dagan.
Oh,
I didn't tell you, but today's my birthday. I left to go to a birthday dinner with my family. I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier and I had to leave early. I'll be sure to catch myself up and be ready for next week. She's a good kid. She is a good kid. Yeah. I had no idea. She's a good kid. She's great. I think that was tactical not to let us know, frankly.
uh-oh. Somebody put your chair down?
I didn't miss no. Oh, Scott, can we have you back?
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thanks.
Excellent.
All right, I'm sure everyone wants to get out of here as much as we do, so let's keep rolling here. I need to get a motion to bring the board back out of executive session into regular session.
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion carries. I need to get a motion for personnel actions as presented.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I need to get a motion for the approval of the audit report from, hang on just a second. Who's our auditors? PMCH, as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Real quick, would you want to explain this a little bit, Travis?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, in the essence of time, I'll keep this very short and sweet. If you turn to page 80 in the report, you can see that we received unmodified opinion on both our financial statements and our federal awards. Unmodified is the best opinion that you can get. We did have a couple of findings. One related to our eligibility for our Title I grant, and another on a reporting issue that I own. I just completely dropped the ball on an ESSER report. Mike and I have already had discussions to put processes in place to make sure these two items don't happen in the future. With that, I'd just like to give some kudos to my staff in the office. We went through some changes this past year, and keeping track of close to $36 million is a pretty big feat, and I think we do exceptionally well. So kudos to my staff. With that, I'd answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Sweeney? Sweeney, if you would you please explain the difference between an independent audit and the state audit, and why we go with an independent audit?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. So this report that you're looking at is our annual financial compliance audit. We go through it each and every year. They audit all of our general fund dollars and then pick a couple of major programs for special revenue federal funds. And then also with the State Department of Audit, they go through every year, they do what's called a blitz audit, and they pick a different aspect of the funding model to audit. Usually it's 3 or 4 years in the past, the numbers that you're looking at. So right now we're going through one of those with it's called the at-risk section of the model. Deals with English language learners free and reduced and mobile students. And then once every 5 to 10 years, the Department of Audit will do a full audit on the district. And they'll go through each and every component of the audit. I would assume that our district will be coming up shortly on that full audit list, since we haven't had it for.
Questions for Mr. Sweeney on the audit? Nice job on the audit, by the way. The U.S. military can't seem to find their billions, so I appreciate you have almost no. It's great. All right, thanks, Travis.
You're welcome.
Need to get a motion for approval of the stipulated expulsion agreements as presented.
We got
We did not vote on that?
No.
How about if we actually vote on that? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for keeping me straight, you guys. I need to get a motion for the stipulated expulsion agreement or agreements as presented. Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Now, this next one to me is really exciting. I'd like to get a motion for the acceptance of the National Archery in Schools Program grant for the tune of $2,798. And then it also requires us to expend $500 from our general fund.
Second.
Mike, did you want to have a quick comment about this one?
Sure, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So this grant opportunity is from the National Archery in Schools program. What it does is gives funding to our school district. If we put up the $500, they will give us the remaining $2,798 to give us equipment for 10 shooters with bows, 10 right-hand bows, 2 left-hand bows, plus targets, arrows, posters, and other things like that to facilitate archery in our PE class over at Landon Middle School. This came to our attention from Jordan Cooper, one of our PE teachers at LMS. He's very excited about it, and just wanted to see if you guys would be interested in the program.
Awesome. Any questions or comments on this one?
Also, there was an archery program when I was in elementary school, and it was great.
I think when I was in school, it was a few years before you, but we had one at Northside too. I hope Mr. Cooper can prevent this kind of business that I was famous for, it turns out. I think you can still find some over there in the field. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And the next one is also I think it's really cool that we've got these two in the same night. I think this is a neat direction we're headed. So I need to get a motion for the LMS Winter Outdoor Education Expedition proposal.
So moved. Second.
Would you like to discuss this one?
Sure, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So what you see there attached to the agenda under this item is a proposal from Mr. Horton at Lander Middle School and Kelsey Beck from the Paposia Conservation District, and a couple of other parents and stakeholders as well. We used to have some off-site education experiences for middle school kids that have kind of gone away since COVID. There was a big Yellowstone trip, and then 7th graders would often take annual trips to Torrey Valley to go see the lakes and petroglyphs and things. So this is an attempt to try to reignite that part of our curriculum for kids. It talks about place-based education, which is basically just meaning off school grounds in the field someplace, working on standards and giving kids an experience in their own backyards that they might not otherwise have. We tend to assume that a lot of kids go outdoors and hike and camp and fish and do all these things, but a lot of kids don't, even though we live where we live. So with that, I guess I would open the floor to Mr. Horton and Ms. Beck if they wanted to talk about what's great that are in the proposal.
Please.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Kelsey, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Excuse me, I'm Kelsey Beck, the Executive Director of the Paposia Conservation District. And we do a lot of education in the classroom, 4th grade outdoor ed day, 5th grade worldwide monitoring challenge, a lot of these things. And we were wanting to kind of resurrect this Yellowstone idea of this 6th grader adventure that they get to do and kind of bring that idea back. That's why we came
support the middle school students in the Resurrect the Flood program and figure out how we make this work. The Whiskey Conservation Camp is an amazing facility. If you haven't been there, we'd be able to use it essentially rent-free, minus catering costs and special use permits. So it's actually really economical and people want to make this happen, considering the cost of other expeditions that are quite a bit more. So this is a great opportunity. I'd like to try to pilot with you guys and see if we can make this go and make it sustainable for future for kind of sixth grade curriculum.
Yeah, Erica Parker has quite a bit of institutional knowledge about some of those trips that the middle school used to do. And she brought in Kelsey for a meeting with some of us last year. Kelsey and I have the same background in place-based ed from Jeffco, Jefferson County Public Schools in Colorado. They have about a 60, 70-year-old program where every sixth grader spends an entire week at a school in the mountains. So it was easy that we were coming from kind of the same framework for what we were looking for. A lot of what we've heard from teachers is serious excitement and support for the program and serious concern over the efforts that it can take. And it sounds like, especially Expedition Yellowstone, required basically everything of teachers, from planning to fundraising to cooking to like setting up tents and sleeping bag, all of that. They did absolutely everything. And our background from that program, outdoor lab, I think we have a way that we can take a lot of that off their plates, build a program that's sustainable for many years to come.
Any questions? It is a cool facility. It's really awesome up there. When what time of the year would you think about doing this?
They have weeks available in September.
Okay.
And when I taught sixth grade in Jeffco, I would always ask for the first week. Curricularly, you're not wrapping everything up then on the trail, but I think that you give students from varied backgrounds shared experiences that can really bring standards and curriculum to life in the classroom. And you have this team building experience at the beginning of the year where you're pushing yourself beyond limits that you've experienced before. You are solving problems with your classmates face to face, not on Snapchat. I just feel like this program at the beginning of the year and beginning of middle school offers a ton of advantages. One of our science teachers was talking about a standard that they have a really hard time building relevance around in the classroom, which is basically Earth and human activity and human interaction with the Earth and the impacts of that. And the bighorn sheep studies that happen at Whiskey Mountain are a perfect example of that all of our middle schoolers would see firsthand.
I was going to say, if you wait till November, you can see the sheep. It's a little chilly up there.
So hopefully they'll go back, right? I mean, that's the thing. I was talking to Mr. Harris about it today. I had not seen the camp until Kelsey encouraged me to go up. I've been back. Mr. Harris said he went to check it out. He's been back multiple times since then. And yeah, it's right there, an hour away from most of their house. And hopefully, the program in Colorado is very robust, but they have family nights, they have different things where students can show this campus, show where they learned to shoot a bow, or where they learned what succession meant, all of these things. And so, yeah, we have lofty dreams, but we also want to keep it realistic and make it super successful from the start. We had other options for locations. We brought that to our sixth grade team. Whiskey Mountain felt like the best. We looked up at Worthing Meadows, and we also have been in pretty serious communication with Teton Science School, which is an incredible asset to the state, to the country. But we feel that Whiskey Mountain is going to be the most sustainable for
They used to have the Wyoming Association of Student Council, WASC, used to have the leadership camp up there, and it was super impactful. Just the location itself was really impactful. So I think it's awesome. Very cool. So any other questions? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Early resignation stipend. I need to get a motion to get that on the table.
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, got a motion, a second. This has been in place for several years now. Do you want to talk about it real quick, Mike?
Sure, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So basically, I wish that this was called the early notification stipend rather than early resignation, because this would apply to anyone who's not coming back next year for whatever reason. They're resigning, retiring, moving, whatever the case may be. So this notification, if we get this early, as we have in previous years, it really gives us a head start on filling anticipated vacancies, which in the current job market is really, really important for us. There are fewer candidates available and a lot of competition for the best people. We want to have the best people here. This helps us know which positions we're hiring at about the same time that most of the job fairs are happening, which really helps that. You can see under the administrative content how many staff members, both certified and classified, have taken advantage of this when it's offered in the past. Last year it was 12 staff members. The year before that it was 19. And 2021 it was only 9, and 21-22 it was not authorized. So, you know, it's somewhere in that ballpark, probably 10 to 20 staff members that would take advantage if you know, these numbers would hold true for this school year, but we don't know for sure. If it's offered, then we'll know for sure. But I think it's a benefit for the district to be able to get a head start on recruiting and hiring, and benefit outgoing employees as well.
I think it's probably important to note that this is the carrot part of the carrot and stick of notifications, right? The stick part is if they wait too long, then they have part of their insurance that they pay. Is that right?
Mr. Chair, that's correct. So there's a district policy now that if you resign after a certain point in the school year, after May 15th, I think it is, then you owe the district for the employer portion of your health insurance coverage.
Okay. All right, any questions or comments on this one? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Student board representative, what's that? Like to get a motion to approve Dagan Reinhardt as our ongoing student representative from LVHS.
So, okay.
Been moved and second. Any discussion?
Can't believe she didn't tell us it was her birthday.
I know, this is a birthday present.
Can we officially wish her a happy birthday in our notes?
She's awesome. I think we're lucky to have her. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we need to formally approve our board meeting dates for 2025. So if I can get a motion for that.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Some discussion. January 7th, we have a work session. Remind me what we were going to do on January 7th. I'm sorry, short-term memory loss problem.
Mr. Chair, at the January 7th work session, I think it was suggested at our previous meeting to talk about goal setting for the board.
It's okay. Does that still sound good for everyone? Okay. And then the other notable one, February 4th, we're going to have a meeting up at Jeffrey City, sort of a meet and greet and evaluation of kids that are going to come in and all those kinds of things. So,
Mr. Chair.
yes.
Since we are mentioning this right now, can I just ask about that, Meg, if we've gotten things sent out yet, or if we're getting ready to get that, so.
Mr. Chair, Taylor, no, we have not sent that letter out to the registered voters in that list this week. That was in the county clerk, but that will be coming this month. And then we'll also get it posted out there when one of us travels to Colorado or wherever over the break, we'll get it posted out there at the mailbox this week.
Perfect, thank you.
And Mara, so you're aware, May 6th, we do that special meeting because we have to do the preliminary budget review. And then November 11th is our review of the superintendent. Okay. Any other discussion on the board calendar? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That's it for action. Let's move into discussion.
School calendar?
Oh, geez, I was looking at dates and calendar. Dates and calendar are the same thing in my mind. School calendar, thank you, Mara. School calendar for 26-27. I need to get a motion to get that on the table.
So moved. Second.
All right.
That's hard to hear. Are you talking about the
Oh, geez.
27?
Okay, Mike, do you want to discuss this? This always has some complexity to it.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, so one of the things that my counterparts in other school districts have recommended through our Wyoming Association of School Administrators is to have a rolling adoption of the next year's calendar in the sequence. So right now we have calendars adopted through this year and next school year. We'd have to have them at least 2 years out just so that people can plan. It's really helpful for Cyril to be able to plan activities and schedules for different sports and for families to know when graduation is going to be, or if you're planning a big vacation, you know, this is when spring break is, and for all the other reasons that people like to be able to plan ahead. So basically what we have here in the draft calendar is modeled after what we're using this year, which was adopted last November 2023. So there's no major changes to the format or structure. There are 88 instructional days in the first semester, 87 instructional days in the second, so pretty good parity there. And nothing else changed based on the feedback that we got during the major calendar adoption process that we underwent last fall.
Has there been feedback so far about the calendar this year and what we approved?
Mr. Chair, I haven't received a whole lot of feedback on the calendar yet. Most of the changes were, well, at the start of the year, I think there was some feedback about appreciating having that time before students came to really get teams together and do some professional development and some building work. And also have enough time in the classroom to prep lessons and things. That's pretty much the only feedback that I've gotten so far, because we haven't really reached the point in the year where more things have taken effect, like snow day makeups and things like that. I don't think anybody's going to complain about always having 2 weeks at Christmas. That was a major piece of feedback that we got from both families and from staff. So that's maintained here in this draft, in keeping with this year's and next year's calendars, along with spring break starting the last Monday in March. It's consistent, and just making sure we reach our required numbers of days for instruction and for staff.
So go ahead.
Oh,
Taylor.
Mr. Chair, I was just gonna say, I have gotten some feedback from some families and they're really appreciative of just a couple of days off in October. And I think in the past we had just a half day on Wednesday on Thanksgiving break. And then we were doing a full day. So from what I've known of the short school year, most people seem pretty receptive to the breaks. And I'm really happy that we built in those snow days, because we don't want to have to add those like we did a couple of years ago, which is not fun.
I got chewed on pretty good for that.
Yeah.
Couple times, yeah. So when we vote for this, are these pretty much set in stone then for 2026 or 2027? Is that what we're doing here?
Mr. Chair, that is the hope, that we would be able to say this is the calendar. I mean, there's really no change materially other than the specific dates between this 26-27 draft and what we have for this year and 25-26 also.
Okay, I guess we're not voting tonight. Oh, yeah, we are.
I have just a quick
Yeah,
question.
we are.
Is the spring break consistent with the other districts in the county?
Mr. Chair, Karen, I don't know about that. I haven't seen a calendar draft for any other districts on 26-27. I do know that for the past 10 years in this district, our spring break has started on the last Monday in March.
Yeah, and it seems longer. It seems, yeah, I don't know why March seems.
It seems.
I don't know if it's because of the
Every year,
Mondays.
depending on when that
It's
Monday
just on-
falls.
Yeah, that would be my only concern, is I know that was, I heard from people for our calendar last year, it wasn't the same as other districts. So when you have people that work in other districts and have a spouse or have kids, then you're splitting, they're not able to take their spring break at the same time. So, which if you have a kid in elementary and you have to take that week off, that's kind of So just, that would be my only concern is if it's different than other districts, then I'd like to be able to revisit that.
It's hard with some school districts in the county, I think.
But I think there was a goal of the districts to get on the same page, because a long time ago, it was all over the place, and then the districts worked really hard to get the same. And I think we were the only district that was different this year.
Mr. Chair, Karen, if I could, that we haven't changed the date range that we use. It's just the last Monday. We've done that every year since I've been here. I tried to get the county of superintendents to agree to something last year,
Yeah.
but so many of us were new and nobody really wanted to go there. So I'm hoping they all adopt ours. So
Okay.
we'll see.
Great. Okay.
All right. Any other discussion on this? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we're into discussion. We just need to do, now that we have technically a new board, we need to review board committees and building liaisons. So, right now, we have the Curriculum Coordinating Council, which is Eileen, Taylor, and Scott. We have, how do you guys want to do this? Just go through and say whether or not you want to stay on those committees when we hit them? And then we have some holes. If you'd like to either jump on others or fill holes, that would be great. Just let us know. So the CCC, Eileen, Taylor, and Scott. You guys good with staying on that?
Mr. Chair, I love Deidre and I love that committee, but I have been absolutely terrible. So Wednesdays are not the greatest for me to meet. So if Deidre wants to give me the boot, I understand.
Mr. Chair?
Peter.
No, I appreciate it. You and I work in a different way with the state board. And so I think having you on that.
So informally, okay, well then I'd love to stay on that if you're okay with having a engaged. Okay.
That was the most gentle way to try to get off of a committee I've ever heard. Well done. Failed, but well done. All right, CWC Bochis with the H, Scott Jensen. Scott, are you good with staying on that?
Yeah, I can keep doing that.
Okay.
Is it helpful to have another person on there? And I don't know if I'm helpful as a CWC employee or detrimental as a conflict of interest, but.
No, I don't think there'd be any conflict, but there's no reason for two of us to do that one. It's so that's just a representative from each district in the county serves on that board to make sure that we're that the monies are properly being expended for ACT tests and dual enrollments and concurrent enrollments.
Perfect. I will leave just you on it then.
But if you'd like to take it, if you're like already there, the meetings are at CWC in the evening, so you may already be over there. So maybe that would be easier for you to do.
I work in Manders. So.
Oh, do you?
We'll diversify the CWC connections on this.
All right. Fremont County BOCES, Mike. I'm good with that one. You're good with that one? We've got the Lander District Rec Board. Now we'll see how Eileen tries to get out of this one.
No, I'm in.
Are you? You're still in. For the record, that's kind of a brutal.
It's fun though. It's just so fun
to give out, to throw cash at people. Yeah. It's the reason it's brutal is that there are two meetings or two mainly that go from like 5 until 10 or something. I mean, they're long meetings, which is not unlike tonight, actually.
Everybody's laughing.
I know, everyone's like, I think that's bad. You know, listen to you guys up there. All right, policy committee. I guess sometimes I wonder, is it even worth having this committee?
I think if we maybe define, I wasn't here when this one was implemented, but if it's something to provide editorial sharpening and clarification of policies, then I think it's worth it as kind of a just something that you can run the policy through before it lands here at the board?
I think that's what it was designed to do originally, because what we'd sit here and we'd go through policies and say, here's a grammar error, this wasn't clear, so how should we redo it? And we spent a lot of time doing that I think we could have fixed ahead of time. But a lot of those things have been taken care of, and we've got the WSBA that has helped us on some. I don't know how much of that is still there, but I'm certainly willing to do it if you want to.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I'd love to help with just everything correct.
Okay. Mara, don't forget, you can jump in on any of these you want. Just let us know. Safety Security Committee, Karen and Scott.
I can stay on that one.
Salary and benefits.
I would like to dump Curriculum Coordinating Council and join Salary and Benefits instead.
I'd be happy to take curriculum if you're looking to get rid of it, Scotch.
Yeah, let's do that.
We make that swap?
Sorry, Deirdre, no offense.
You got that, Carol? Yep.
And Scott's on salary. And I'd like to stay in here.
Yeah, I'm good.
You guys are good? Okay. Well, we'll cover that later. Strategic and Planning Committee, no member assigned.
I wonder, Mr. Chair, just hearing what you reported from Case earlier about the upcoming changes to school funding, and then also wanting to have a long-term vision in terms of the educational quality and thinking about all the challenges, mental health, AI, cell phones. It seems like as good a time as any to have a strategic planning community and to think long-term about the vision for our schools. I'd be happy to be on it. I don't want to do it by myself.
I think I would be on that as well. I think it'd be a good.
Okay,
way to pick that up.
all right. That sounds good.
I'm with that.
What's that?
You're only on one.
I don't know what we've ever even done with that.
Well, since I've been, honestly, we went through the strategic plan before I actually got on the board. So that was a while ago. If we want to revisit that and go through that pain and I mean, if we'd like to do that, that would be perfectly fine. Okay.
Anyone else?
I would join.
Understand.
Okay.
So when you refer to like strategic plan, you mean the consultant-driven strategic plan that happened?
You know, because I wasn't part of it, I don't really know exactly how that was, but I believe that we had a consultant here to work with us on that. Yep.
Okay.
And so, okay, so we've got Eileen, Mara, and Taylor on that.
Our first task will be to figure out what it is.
Okay, good. Perfect.
We're back.
Tiger Joint Powers Board, I'll stay on that. Hopefully we'll have it dissolved here within the next month or two. So that one should go away. Wellness Committee, I think Kathy was on that. Anyone want to be on the Wellness Committee?
What does it entail?
Wellness.
I think.
Mike, oh, sorry, Tim.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I was just going to say there is a wellness policy in the district. A lot of that comes to us through the state for state requirements. We meet quarterly. Alicia McConnell is our point of contact, our food service director. There's several administrators and school staff that are part of the committee. Just kind of set the direction for wellness efforts in the school district.
I'm happy to be on that one.
Okay, I think that takes care of the board committees. Building liaisons.
Pathfinder is missing off of that list, and I was on.
Oh, it's on the bottom.
It is?
EHS, currently Karen Harms.
Oh.
Would you, we're doing it from the bottom
All
up.
the way.
We're doing it from the bottom up. Would you like to stay on Pathfinder?
Sure.
Okay.
Unless anybody else.
LVHS, Mike?
Can I swap with you, Mike?
No.
Do we have two at LVHS, or do we have to have separate ones?
Well, we can have two. We can have two. All right. So
I'll keep LMS as well. I'll do both the high school.
Okay. All right. Bongo and Crick. Taylor?
I mean, I love volunteer.
All right. And then GPE
Not that I don't know.
and JCE, which may come up.
JCE. Ooh. Yes, I'm.
You good there?
That's great.
All right.
You can just float for I'll float.
Okay, so those are taken care of. All right, cell phone usage in the classrooms. This keeps coming up. It's louder and louder across the state. Lots of movement and motion behind it, momentum. So I think we need to continue to discuss it and where to go. I would propose that we direct Mike and admin to develop a an official cell phone policy for the district for discussion for first reading next meeting. Would you guys be behind that? Would you think that's a reasonable direction? Taylor?
Mr. Chair, I definitely don't have any issues with that. I was just wondering, were we gonna present, I think it would probably be wise of us to present the data from the survey before we.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Do we want to wait on that and we can discuss this
Or
in
do we
January?
have it to discuss? I just didn't know if the closing had ended on it and I didn't see it on here. So if we have it to discuss, I think that's great. So maybe we should listen to the discussion first and public comment.
Okay. Yep. Thank you for the public comment.
Oh, sure.
Oh, she wisely left. Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could, yes, I do have the survey responses. We left it open. I mean, it's been open for a little bit of time. So there were 3 separate surveys here, one for students, one for parents, and one for staff. And I'll share my screen so you all can see that on the Zoom here. 1 second.
Maybe.
Let's see. I'll start with the staff on this one. I'll start with students. That'll look better. Okay. There it is. Okay, so students, we sent this out based on discussion at a previous board meeting. We sent this out to students in grades 5 through 12. And you can see here, let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, you can see a little bit the breakdown of students that responded. What
Sorry
schools
to
they're
interrupt.
from.
Could you maximize on the screen up there if you can, or is that possible?
Chris might be too.
Thanks, Chris.
Is that okay for you guys?
Yes.
Okay. So, almost very close to a majority or a plurality of students came from Lander Valley High School. We did get a good response from Lander Middle School. And then our 5th graders came through big time. 89 5th graders chimed in. And we had 13 students from Pathfinder who responded. So what you're going to see on the next pie chart doesn't break this down by school. I can show you that if you'd like, but this is basically what we had students respond to. Which of the following statements best describes your opinion about the use of cell phones at your school? One option was what we're doing now is working, no changes necessary. That was espoused by 98 students, or almost 22%. This statement, students should not have access to their cell phones during the school day. I don't think anybody was too surprised by that one. Only 3.3% of students said that was their opinion. Students should only have access to their cell phones outside of class, i.e. before or after school, during lunch or other scheduled breaks. This is what is in place a lot of places around our district. 22.7% or 102 students felt that way. Students should be able to use their cell phones for assignments in class was 19 students, or just over 4%. And then students should be able to use their cell phones whenever the teacher says it's okay. That was almost 26%, about 116 students. And then this option, students should be able to use their cell phones whenever they feel it is appropriate. And that is 99 students, or 22% of the group. So this is you can tell this is not a very scientific poll or survey, but just a rough feeling of how students, they had to pick one, they couldn't pick multiples. Although if they really wanted to, they could game this and send multiple responses if they wanted. It specifically did not include an open response on this because we just wanted to kind of get a snapshot of how students were feeling about it. The items on let me stop sharing, I'll get a new tab up there. Oops. me share the parent one next. Okay. Parent responses, we had 723. Good representation from around the district for various schools. Lander Valley High School, the most of the group. Then Gannett Peak, or no, sorry, then the middle school, then Gannett Peak, Baldwin, and then last was Pathfinder. Unsurprisingly, lowest enrollment, so that's not too concerning. These statements were very similar to what was on the other two surveys, so they kind of correlate them. Current practices are working. Only 10.7% of parents felt that way, that there were no changes needed. About 30% said students should not have access to their cell phones during the school day. I was a little surprised by that on the parent survey. Students should only have access to their cell phones during non-instructional. That was the plurality of responses. 284 parents felt that way. It's the best description of their opinion. Students should be able to use their cell phones for classwork. Only 2.2% of parents felt that way. Students should be able to use their cell phones whenever the teacher says it's okay, almost 13%. And then unrestricted cell phone access, that was only a little over 5% of parents felt that way. So a big difference in that response, at least between students and parents. And then the last was the staff. Maybe I can quickly, I can't switch, darn. Staff members, 186 responses. This is another area where it's not very scientific. Some staff work at multiple schools, some staff work at the central office or the bus barn or whatever. They just could pick multiples. If they worked at multiple schools, they could just respond multiple times to the survey. Again, Lander Valley High School, the highest number of responses, and then Gannett Peak, then the middle school, Baldwin, and then Pathfinder. So these are the staff responses. Students should only have access to their cell phones during non-instructional times. That's the plurality at 36%. The next most popular response was students should not have access at all to cell phones during the day. 28% of staff. No change is necessary. It's the next most popular, 23%. Students should be able to use cell phones whenever the teacher says it's okay, about 11%. Then the next, no restrictions at all. 2 staff members felt that was the best description of their opinion. And then students should be able to use their cell phones for classwork. Only 2 of our respondents who were staff members felt that way. So very interesting responses, some variation from the 3 groups, which was to be expected, but I kind of was surprised at how much variation there was really among the 3. I don't know if that makes the board's task any easier or what bearing this may have on other people who are looking at the same question around the state or in the legislature, but that's what we had for Fremont 1.
I'm just impressed we got so many responses in such a short amount of time. A lot of times our surveys don't yield a lot of responses. And I don't know if it's the short survey helped because it was exceptionally short, and that might have, once people clicked on it, been like, oh, this is manageable. But I think it's good information.
I do too. Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, in the document that you attached, Mike, you have 2 columns of districts that have a policy and do not have a policy. So when you're saying have a policy, is that prohibiting use in some way?
Mr. Chair, Eileen, I don't know exactly what that column means. These results are in the administrative content part of the board docs, so that's why some of you may not be able to see them in the public, but when it says have a policy, that means there's some policy on the books that it says something about cell phones.
So not necessarily a prohibition.
You could say use them whenever. It just, WSBA sent this out and they had most of the districts respond, but they just basically put them in these 2 camps.
Yeah, and I asked Brian to get a model policy for us, and he did not send a model policy, but rather the results of this sort of survey. And there was almost no information with it. Like, for example,
So that's where this came from.
yes, and have a policy. I see that's correct. Yeah, so I don't know what have a policy does not have a policy means in these terms. I was really hoping that he'd say, here's the policy that Riverton's using, here's the policy that Powell's using, blah, blah, blah. And these are the two sort of competing models that we could look for. Didn't get anything like that, so.
Well, it seems like Fremont 25 is on the radar right now in the news media
Yeah.
for the.
Yeah.
I see.
So they're floating around, they're out there. And I mean, that's where I was coming at from saying, rather than try to, craft one on the fly tonight, have Mike and the admin put it together. And then we can review it probably in January. And I think, personally, as we look at these, certainly based on, I'm not surprised that the kids would skew more than let us use it. But I'm certainly not surprised that both the teaching staff and the parents are skewing more towards, geez, we got to get back to the classroom and away from the phones. And I know that we do have, right now we don't have a formal policy. We do have in our handbooks some policies, some pseudo policies. I mean, they're not technically policies within the handbooks. The problem that I have with that is that when I talk to kids, and when we heard from Dagan last meeting, and when we've talked to other kids and other parents, a lot of times the issue is that it's hit or miss depending on which teacher is responsible for enforcing the handbook. So personally, I think it would be good to have this as a district policy to make it more clear where we're at.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that, Jared. I think it would benefit everybody if we had a uniform way of handling cell phones across the board for all the schools. And, we started today's meeting or near the beginning talking about, mental health and challenges that kids are facing nowadays. There's no doubt there's a lot of kids are struggling with their mental health. That's part of why we see the drug abuse problem increasing. And cell phone usage, we're not blazing any trails when we're talking about removing cell phones from the classroom. This has been done in lots of places now. And a lot of success has been seen for kids, both in improvements in engagement, improvements in mental health, improvements in learning, decreases in bullying, and other things. There's almost no negative to removing cell phones from the classroom. And the surveys, I think, Mike, make this a lot easier to do because it appears that both staff and parents are fairly unified. Significant majorities feeling that there should be restrictions on cell phone usage. That's just what those would look like. And I couldn't cite them off the top of my head, but there are compelling studies that show that the further a school removes the cell phone from the child, the bigger the improvements are going to be. So it seems like maybe some guidance from the board would help if we're going to have Mike or admin come up with a draft policy. The question is, where and when do the cell phones get removed? So you could have kids deposit them, or you could just say they can't pull them out of their backpack in the classroom, right? So you just can't display the cell phone, but you can have it in your pocket or in your bag. So that would be maybe the least restrictive. But then you could say, no, you have to deposit it in a locker or some sort of contraption at the classroom door. So you can bring it into the classroom and then you deposit it in a bag or something. Or you could say you have to leave it in your locker in the school, which I know we don't necessarily use lockers, but we could. Or we could have kids deposit their cell phones at the school room or the schoolhouse door. So as you enter the school, you lock up your cell phone and you can retrieve it when you leave school. And I would suggest that we ought to consider that the further away the kids are from their cell phones, the better off they're going to be. The more engaged they'll be, the better the learning improvements will be. I'd like us to consider having kids deposit their cell phones in some sort of lockbox or something at the doors to the buildings.
Yes.
Sorry, I just, Scott reminded me of a document that I started to write up and gather. So when we were at the WSBA conference, one of the keynote speakers was a man named Douglas Reeves from Creative Leadership, and he's an educational consultant that travels nationwide. And he talked about a book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, or Haidt. Talked about that research. And so there was actually a study done by a global education monitoring GEM, and the study talked about, just what Scott mentioned, that they found that the closer the cell phone was to proximity of students, the higher levels of anxiety. So he implored all of the WSBA participants that were there to encourage the idea of non-cell phone usage in classrooms, and said at the very least have a docking station when kids come into their classroom, that they can at least charge it and it's on the other side of the room. But he said that the results of this global study that was done, saying even in their pocket or out of sight, the closer it is to them or on their person, their anxiety levels are raised. So that was a very interesting thing that I thought on that, as again, getting it out of, and then he talked about maybe if we're looking at a policy, also including earbuds in that, because earbuds are an issue as well, as we all know. And then Natrona County does have a policy, and Mike, I'll be happy to share this with you. It's more geared towards just allowing usage during passing periods and things like that. But I've been looking at a few district policies, and so I can NC's policy I can share. That's really helpful.
Sure. Yeah, one of the concerns that I have, particularly if it's on your person or in your backpack, is you always get that constant buzz, right? The notifications, and even if you don't pull it out, that's that heightened awareness that someone's trying to get a hold of you, or something happened on, well, I was about to say Facebook and really date myself. Something happened on Snapchat or whatever, and I really want to check it, and that's why I agree with that. I think farther away probably were better, and getting those notifications turned off when they get put in a docking station, so you don't constantly hear that buzz from across the room. But it's tricky, right? Well, most of us, or many of us, wear the watches, so you can't really have them deposit. Well, maybe you could have them deposit the watches too, but that's probably going a little bit far right now. But certainly the phones, I think, would make sense.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Laura.
and Mike, I would also just ask, we consider ease of a solution will only be effective if it's easy for students to participate in and easy for teachers to implement. And so thinking about if we're going to dock them, every student like walking into the school, what happens at 7:55 in the morning when hundreds of students walk in the high school? That doesn't seem practical. And so also taking that into consideration.
Yeah, I was almost thinking more of the docking station in a classroom as opposed to, each classroom would have.
I've seen schools, it's like your participation rate is your phone has to be in the pocket. I'd fail though, because I'd lose my phone and then wouldn't be able to put it in the pocket and get my participation. But
We're also going, like, if we do implement this, I think anything is better than what we've been doing. So we can always go with the docking station or something like that and then say, oh, we don't feel like it's effective enough. But I saw some in some school districts where it's lock boxes and things like that. And I just think at this point, let's just get something going and then we can, refine it. And look at, ease of implementation.
And I don't know that we need it at the board level to deal with ramifications or anything like that. That's more of an administrative task, I would think. But you have enough to go on?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I think so.
Okay, all right.
But if you have sample policies, if you look through that list of districts that have policies, you see something promising, or you notice something within a policy that you think is important to include in ours, please send it my way, and I will kick this around with the admin team as well.
Okay. Thank you. Look forward to see what you come up with in January. One of the things that I wanted to mention, I brought this one to the table. I just want to discuss it real quick. Laura has provided us with $186,000 of donations with 17 awards. And I thought maybe, I know that they're not quite out of our community yet. They've probably got another year here, or maybe even a year and a quarter. But I thought it might be appropriate for the school board just to have either a letter to the editor or maybe an ad taken out, just thanking Laura for everything that they've done for the district. But I certainly didn't want to do that without the board's sort of go ahead. So I wondered whether or not anyone would have any issues with authoring a quick letter to the editor in that regard. That would be great.
Good.
All right with everyone? Okay, cool. All right, part D, Zoom recordings. Mara, did you want to?
Yeah, and I know it's late, so I'm happy to bump this to a future meeting too, but I know county commissioners, city council, and a lot of school boards around the state make a Zoom recording of board meetings available. And I know many of us, if not all of us, value transparency. And so I'm curious, A, if there's a reason we don't do that as a board, or B, if that is a possibility for the future to post a Zoom recording online.
Historically, it came about, we originally didn't have any kind of recordings available. Then once we had Zoom, we recorded them, but we didn't, the board voted not to do that and allow them to exist only so long as Carol could get the minutes done based on those Zoom recordings. And then we would dispose of them with the minutes being the public record. We can certainly have that conversation if we want to bring it back up.
I would love to have that conversation, and I'm happy, if next meeting seems like a better time, I'm happy to give you all time to think about it.
How about we do this, Mike? Would you be willing to talk with Mr. Kolpicki about this and just make sure if there's any traps or anything like that that we need to be aware of before we go through it, and then we can chat about it in January.
Thank you.
You bet. All right. Anything else for discussion? The troops are getting antsy out there, I can tell. We got to get rolling. Administrative details, reminders, future plans, December to January, WSBA new board member workshop series. Mara, if you need those dates or to register, just talk to Carol and she can get you set up for that. January 7th, again, our work session, we'll be talking about priorities and plans here at 6 o'clock. January 11th, WSBA board chair workshop. Honestly, I will not attend this. I've attended them in the past and got absolutely zero out of it. So I'm not going to waste my time. It's usually, well, I probably won't attend it. January 21st, regular board meeting, 6 o'clock, and we are adjourned.